This is Module 3, Lesson 3, titled Real World Positive and Negative Numbers and Zero. The goals of this lesson are: I can use integers to indicate change in elevation, temperature, and balance in an account. And I can describe situations involving integers. As always, feel free to watch this video as many times as necessary and pause the video at any point and make sure that you take good notes throughout. Let's look at example number 1. So the picture below shows 3 different people participating in activities at 3 different elevations. We're going to discuss what we see. And what do you think the word elevation means in this situation? Well, notice that we have one person on the left. He's hiking in the mountains, and he says, I'm hiking, so I'm above sea level. Then we have a sailboat, so I'm sailing, so I'm at sea level. And then the third person's on the right saying, I'm scuba diving, so I'm below sea level. Elevation, the word elevation means how high up or how far down below sea level something is. So if we think about it, above sea level is going to have a positive elevation if we think as sea level being 0. The sailboat is going to be at sea level, so we would say that would be a 0. And then on the right, the scuba diver is below sea level. He's under the surface of the water, so therefore he's going to have a negative elevation. His integer is going to, that represents his elevation, is going to be a negative number. Now, if we look at the exercises, let's refer back to example 1, and it gives us the following information. The scuba diver is at 30 feet below sea level. The sailor is at sea level. And the hiker is 2 miles, or 10,560 feet, above sea level. The first thing we have to do is write an integer to represent each situation. So if we look at the scuba diver, he is below sea level. We're going to use sea level as our 0 point, our starting point. Below sea level is going to be a negative representation. So that scuba diver is going to have a negative 30 that represents his elevation. The sailor is at sea level, so sea level will represent 0 as our starting point. And then the hiker is above sea level. If we think of 0 as sea level on a vertical number line, those positive values would be above 0 or higher than 0. So the hiker is going to have a positive integer representing his situation. We'd say it would be 2, or if we're talking about feet, we could represent him with 10,560. Now if we look at number 2, it says use an appropriate scale to graph each of the following situations on the number line to the right. Also write an integer to represent both situations. So if we have a hiker that's 15 feet above sea level and a diver that's 20 feet below sea level, and I want to plot those points where they're at on the number line, I first need a starting point. I need 0. Well, my scale can't be by ones because I won't fit them on there. An appropriate scale in this case might be 5. If I go up and down by 5s, my number line scale is going to look like this. Now if I plot the point where the hiker is at, 15 feet above sea level, above means a positive amount. It's going to be above the sea level, which is at 0. And then the diver is going to be below sea level. Below means negative. And it's going to be below where the 0 is at. Now the next question says for each statement there are 2 related statements, 1 and 2. Determine which related statement, 1 or 2, is expressed correctly and circle it. Then correct the other related statement so that both parts 1 and 2 are stated correctly. So in letter A, we have a submarine submerged 800 feet below sea level. The first statement says the depth of the submarine is negative 800 feet below sea level. And the second one is 800 feet below sea level can be represented by the integer negative 800. The correct statement is going to be the second one. 800 feet below sea level can be represented with a negative number. It's below 0. Now the reason why the first one can't be correct is because we cannot use two negative expressions at the same time. Notice this is a negative integer and also below means negative. And kind of like in language arts, we can't write using a double negative. We can only use one of those things as being negative. So we can say correctly that the submarine is 800 feet below sea level. Or we can say that the submarine is at negative 800 feet. Notice both of those use only one negative representation. Okay, there's the negative representation in below, and there it is in the negative integer. No double negatives, just like in language arts. Now the second sentence, let's see which one of those would represent it. It says the elevation of a coral reef with respect to sea level is given at negative 150 feet. So the first one, the coral reef is 150 feet below sea level. That is a correct statement. I'm going to circle that one. Okay, it has only one negative representation, one negative part. The second one, the depth of the coral reef is negative 150 feet below sea level. That one is not correct. Notice it uses two negative parts. So we can correct it by saying, like the first statement, the coral reef is 150 feet below sea level, or we could say the coral reef is at negative 150 feet without using the words below sea level.